Welcome back for part 2 of my HKMLC 75-inch smartboard review. In part 1, I kind of showed you how the smartboard worked and everything that you can do with it. And in part 2, we're going to be taking a little bit of a deeper dive. We're going to be going into how good the picture quality is in different lighting situations. We're also going to be doing some gamings, whether that be on my Xbox Series X console, as well as the tablet portion of the smartboard and the PC portion. We're going to be pushing it to its limits. The smartboard does have a 60 Hz refresh rate as well as an 8 millisecond response time, so I'm expecting the games to be pretty smooth. I'm also going to show you what the monitor looks like connected to a MacBook Pro, and you can also hook up multiple extra monitors to the smartboard to kind of extend your experience. There's a lot of really great information in part 1, so if you haven't checked that out yet, I will be putting a link in the video description, and if you guys want to pick this up, I will also be putting a product link for this in the video description as well. So just to give you a little recap in case you're not going to go watch part 1, this is a 4K ultra high definition display. It does have tablet capabilities, just like your smaller tablet. You can use your fingers or a stylus. It has a whiteboard functionality, and it's also got a built-in 11th gen Intel Core i5 PC. It also does come in smaller sizes other than the 75-inch if this is just a little bit too big for you. So let's start off with the console gaming. So as you can see in the top right hand corner, it says it's at 3840 by 2160 by 60 Hertz. So right off the bat, the picture looks amazing, and because it's a matte screen, it helps keep that glare down if you're in a brighter environment. So let's try out some PUBG. So everything's looking pretty smooth so far. Again, we're at the 60 Hz refresh rate. Everything seems to be moving pretty smooth, and I do not feel like there's any lag. Moving around the cursor, everything is very responsive and smooth, so you should have a pretty good gaming experience. So PUBG is definitely looking really good. I'm seeing absolutely no lag whatsoever. It's nice and smooth. So you should have a pretty good gaming experience playing first-person shooters. Now the speakers on the smartboard do get really loud, so I kind of only have them up about 25%. So you can kind of get a little taste of how loud they get, but still hear me. Oh! That's what happens when you don't pay attention to the road. So even with the screen moving as fast as it is, I didn't see any ghosting. I don't see any issues with performance. Everything seems pretty smooth. So no matter if you're playing racing games or first-person shooters on the smartboard, you should have a pretty good gaming experience on console. And then if we go under the settings for the Xbox, you can see that it is displaying a 4K resolution. So now that we know that console gaming works really well, we're going to move on to the tablet side and play some games here. So we're going to go into our more applications. We'll swipe over. You can see I do have some Fruit Ninja, PUBG, Angry Birds, Call of Duty, and some other things in here that we'll test out and see if they work. So let's start off with our Fruit Ninja. And again, touch works great on this smartboard as well. So that is super cool. Now there is a slight bit of lag, but the game is still absolutely playable. And when's the last time you played Fruit Ninja on a 75-inch screen with all 10 of your fingers? So now let's play some Angry Birds. This is one of my favorite games to play on a tablet, and I'm sure kids would absolutely lose their mind if they got to play it on a 75-inch screen. So Angry Birds seems to run really well, nice and smooth. And again, for kids to play this in the classroom on this big screen would be amazing. Now I have tried to load Call of Duty, but the application kind of loads and then it just simply closes and crashes. So the Call of Duty Warzone does not work on this, at least right now. And it just closes. So now let's see how well, if at all, PUBG will run on this smartboard. All right, so PUBG finally loaded, and I just want to show you the graphics settings that I'm sitting on right here. So HD is the highest that we can go on the smartboard with the frame rate of high. We've got our style, which doesn't really matter at all. So we'll go back into our game. And just like on your mobile phone, you need to use two hands to kind of move around, which is pretty interesting to play on such a big board. But as you can see, it's running pretty smooth. The graphics aren't that great, but you can still play the game. And if you can find some way to get a controller to work with this game, because you can link an Xbox controller up to Bluetooth with the smartboard, you might be able to play this game with that as well. But as you can see, everything is pretty smooth. It's running normally. So the game is definitely playable, you just won't have the best graphics. Now I also tried to play Xbox's cloud gaming through their Xbox app, but for some reason on the smartboard, there's no option for cloud gaming. Now just like a regular Android tablet, you can go into the Google Play Store and scroll through multiple applications and games. For the most part, the majority of them will work, but there are some applications that just won't install on the smartboard. Let's try out Google Earth. So that is pretty cool. You can zoom in and out just like on a regular tablet. This would be great for in a classroom setting. Everything seems to be running fairly smooth. And it's got a really great picture, especially on the 75-inch screen. That is really cool. And then of course we also have some streaming services like Netflix. We also do have YouTube, of course, which works flawlessly. The one thing I couldn't get to load was Disney Plus, which was kind of weird. It won't even let you install the application. It just says it doesn't work with your device. But we have Plex, we have Teams, Zoom, and you can also load Prime Video and Paramount Plus. Now, in case you're wondering how well the CPU performs in the tablet mode, let's run a Geekbench. Okay, so our Geekbench results are done. For the single core, we got 142, and for the multi, we got a 632. Again, this is just for the CPU. We're going to be doing the GPU in just a second, but if we go over to the multi-core, you can see where the smartboard ranks in comparison to smartphones such as the Galaxy S23 Ultra, the Plus, the regular 23, the Fold. So some of the newer flagship phones are getting into the 4,000 range, and the smartboard is at 632. But again, this isn't supposed to be used for high graphics gamings and things like that. This is just to give you some idea of where the smartboard sits in comparison to that. So now let's go on to the GPU benchmark. And then here we have our GPU score. We got a 663. We're running Android 12. We have one processor with 8 cores, and the base frequency is a 1.2. So let's see where we rank with our GPU. So here is the smartboard at 663, and again, it's going to give you a comparison between some of the other top tier and lower tier mobile phones. We have the Fold 4 coming in at 7,000, whereas the lowest is going to be the Galaxy A53 5G at 2305. So now one other thing I wanted to test out is if the tablet is capable of playing 4K video clips, because if you have a external hard drive like I have hooked up here using the USB Type-C or the USB, you want to be able to know that you're going to be able to play some video files. So I have one of my reviews that I did on the smartboard for part 1. It is in 4K, so we'll see how well that runs. That's right here. We'll click on that. And as you can see, it's definitely able to play it, and it runs just fine. Looks great in 4K, and it's perfectly smooth. I'll turn up the volume so you guys can hear. And it's not just made for any one person. Anybody can find a use for this smartboard, whether you're a business and you do a lot of conferencing, or you're a teacher, you work from home or in a school. Even for me being a content creator, this monitor would be great for behind the camera. So as you can see, it doesn't have any issues playing 4K video from a file, especially on an external hard drive. So another thing I wanted to test out is how fast the SSD is inside the tablet portion of the smart drive. So we're going to do a speed test really quick on the internal drive. As you can see, we have the internal card selected. It's a total of 108.39 gigabytes, and we have 89 gigabytes free. So we'll start this, and it's going to take just a little bit of time because we have 24,000 megabytes to go. All right, so here we have our results for our read and write test. We got 99 megabytes a second for the write and 242 megabytes for the read. We take a look at our results here. Again, it gives you the same thing. All right, so now we're going to test out the casting abilities. I believe you're able to cast up to 9 devices on the smartboard. I have 8 devices on standby right now that I'm going to connect up to the smartboard, and we'll see exactly what that looks like. So I am on the eShare app that's built into the smartboard, and now I'm going to go ahead and connect each device. So here is my iPhone 14 Pro Max. So you can see it's casting the screen. Here is an Android tablet that I have. Here is an iPad Air. Here's my MacBook Pro. Here's another iPad Air. Here's an Android tablet. Here's another Android tablet that I have. All right, so here we have 3, 6, 7 devices connected. If you want to display one as a huge screen, you can simply just tap on it. You can mute it, or you can make it go full screen, like I will on my tablet here, and it just blows it up to the main screen and kind of gets rid of all the other ones that are connected. If you want to minimize that back, you just push that button, and then it displays, or it tries to display the best that it can, all the devices connected at one time. And if you want to simply just disconnect them, you can just hit the X button here. We'll close this out, and it kind of gives more real estate for some other devices. But that is pretty cool. So as you see, now we only have 4 devices connected, and the windows are much bigger. So the more devices that are connected, the smaller the windows are going to be. So if you want a bigger window, you can again simply just maximize that one device, or just simply connect less devices to the smartboard. So another thing we're going to test out is connecting devices up to the HDMI port and seeing what they look like, such as a MacBook Pro or even a laptop. So here I have an HDMI to USB Type-C cable. We're going to plug this directly into the HDMI port. And the other end right into my MacBook. And as you can see, the smartboard will automatically switch to the front HDMI. And it turns the smartboard into a second display. Now it is displaying 4K at 60 Hertz, which is definitely good. And as you can see, all the text and everything on the screen is nice and clear. So I'll make the text bigger here. As you can see, everything is still nice and clear, very crisp, very easy to see. So if you want to use the smartboard as a second display for your tablet, a MacBook, or laptop, you can definitely do that very easily, and it displays in 4K at 60 Hertz, providing that your device can support it. So here is our display settings. We have the smartboard and we have my MacBook Pro. If we go over to the smartboard, you can see that it's displaying 3840 by 2160, but we can also make that text bigger if you really want to. And again, if I hover over this, you can see the max resolution again is a 3840 by 2160. It might have been a little hard to see because it was so small, but you can change the resolutions very easily. Again, everything is very smooth. As you can see, the refresh rate is 60 Hertz. You can change that to pretty much whatever you want right here. But everything looks, even at a resolution of 1080p, the text and everything still on the board is very crisp, very easily able to read. So you can keep a high resolution on your MacBook Pro and then lower the resolution so you can see it a lot easier on the smartboard. So I'll make the text a little larger. This is 720p, and even at 720p, everything's very large, but it's still very clear. And then we'll go to 2560 by 1440. And then 3200 by 1800, and then at 4K. Nice and sharp. And if we take a look at my MacBook Pro, you can see that it's still using the ProMotion refresh rate, which is 120 Hertz, and it's still at the resolution that I wanted at. Right now I have it at 1728 by 1117, but we can go all the way up to 2056 by 1329. And then here I have my Galaxy S24 Ultra, which you can use DeX when you connect it up to a screen such as this. So we'll plug in the same HDMI cable with the USB Type-C into my S24 Ultra. As you can see, the screen switches to the front HDMI directly, and I will turn on DeX. So as you can see, Samsung DeX just started. We're at 1080p at 60 Hertz. And then once you're in the DeX, you can use your phone as a little touchscreen. I don't know if you guys can see that cursor right there. It's a black cursor, so it's a little harder to see. Let's see if I can move it over the Play Store. There you can see the cursor there. So you can use this as another mobile device, watch movies, anything like that, but have a much bigger screen. And there, as you can see, even at 1080p, you can still easily see the screen and all the text. You can zoom in. It's just very convenient to carry your phone around as a mobile PC and have such a big screen to use it on. Now, just like you can connect devices up to the smartboard to use this as a second monitor, because this has a built-in PC, you can also connect the PC up to other things to extend the smartboard. So I'm going to connect the smartboard up to my projector, which will give us the 75-inch screen on the smartboard, as well as a 150-inch extra screen. All right, so here I have the smartboard connected up to my projector. I've turned off some of the lights just so you can see the projector a little bit better, but I've also connected up a wireless mouse and keyboard so you can kind of just sit back at your desk or your couch or whatever and operate the PC without having to, touch the screen. So here you can see the cursor is on my projector, and if I go over to the side, it's now on my smartboard. So we'll open up Chrome on the smartboard here, and we'll move it over to the projector. So now you can see we have Google on the 150-inch screen, and then we can also do some other things over on the smartboard. We'll open up this web page. So now we have a couple web pages open. So now you have a ton of real estate to do whatever you need, whether, like I said, you're in a conference room, you're using it for content creation, or even if you're a teacher in a classroom. Now, if we take a look at the display settings, I just want to show you that it is displaying in 4K at 60 Hertz. So we'll bring this over here. So there's our displays. I'll identify them. There's screen 1 and there's screen 2. So we'll click on screen 2 to see what you can do here. So as you can see, the resolution is being displayed at 3840 by 2160. That's 4K. And I just want to show you that it is also at 60 Hertz. So to show you that the PC is capable of outputting 4K at 60 Hertz, here, as you can see, we are on the smartboard information right here. It's displaying 3840 by 2160 at 60 Hertz, 8 bits. You can also change the refresh rate for the smartboard. And if we scroll up, we can change to our projector. And again, it's still showing 3840 by 2160 at 60 Hertz, 8 bits. And you can also change the refresh rate for that. So if you need to hook up the smartboard to some other monitor, the PC is definitely capable of outputting 4K at 60 Hertz. So now we're going to take a look at the screen's contrast ratio. I'm going to turn off all the lights. I've got this pure black background here that we're going to use for this test. We're going to see if there's any light bleed as well as any white haze on the screen. So there is a slight bit of haze on the screen in a totally dark environment with a totally black screen if you're looking at the screen dead on. Now, you're not going to really have this situation much where you're going to be in a totally dark environment with a totally dark screen with nothing on it, but this is just to give you an idea of what the contrast looks like. Now, if you're looking at the screen off center like we are now, the haze definitely is a lot more than it would be if you were looking at the screen dead on. But again, you're not going to really be in this situation where there's absolutely nothing bright on the screen. Now, as far as light bleed goes, if you're looking at the screen dead on again, you really will only see the light bleed very slightly, but I think it's a lot worse in the camera than it is in real life. But on camera, it's showing like little spots of light bleed down at the bottom of the screen, but pretty much the rest of the screen looks perfectly fine. Again, if you're watching something on the screen dead on, you're not going to really see these spots as prominent as you would from what you're seeing on the camera. In real life, it's not that drastic. So now let's put a little bit of brightness on our screen just so you guys can see what the difference is. So again, this was a picture. So here, as you can see, everything's nice and bright. It looks, the screen looks absolutely beautiful when there's a bright spot on the screen. We'll go back into our web page here, kind of minimize this so you guys can see. So in the middle was the pure black. Around the edges is the gray portion of the application itself. And as you can see, you can't even see the light bleed on the bottom of the screen anymore. So even if there's a slight bit of white on the screen, you totally won't even see those light bleed spots anymore. So it's really not something to even worry about. And then something else I like to demo when I'm showing off the screen's contrast are these moon videos, because it's a perfect example of what the contrast ratio looks like when there's a combination of dark and light on the screen, which is a very realistic situation, especially if you're going to be, watching movies or, things like that on the screen. So again, the contrast ratio looks really nice. There is, again, a slight bit of haze if you're off center, but for the most part, it does a pretty good job at separating the darks from the whites, even though there is a slight bit of white haze. The picture still looks amazing, especially in 4K. So now you can definitely see what I was talking about when I was saying that a totally dark environment with a totally dark picture is not very realistic, and it's not something you really have to worry about, because 99% of the time the screen is going to have something that's lit up bright along with the darker portions of the screen. And as you can see, the screen still looks beautiful. And as far as the viewing angles are concerned, you can pretty much almost go 180 degrees, and there's absolutely no brightness degradation whatsoever. So no matter where you're sitting in your classroom, your conference room, or your home, you're going to be able to see the screen perfectly fine, pretty much from any angle. So while we're on the PC side of the smartboard, again, we're going to be doing some tests just like we did the Android tablet side. So we're going to be doing a disk speed test to see how fast the SSD is inside the PC, as well as play some games to see what it can and cannot do. And for those of you who want to know more about the technicals of the PC, I'm going to show you that, as well as some of the Geekbench scores. So first off, let's see what the speed of the built-in SSD is. So here is the C drive. It's kind of separated into two separate drives, 50 gigabytes each. I'm sure that you could combine all that if you wanted with some hard drive software. But we're going to be testing out the C drive. So we'll go ahead and start off the test, and it's going to be doing 1 gigabyte chunks. So here are the results of our internal drives. We're getting 514.13 megabytes a second for the read and 477.52 for the write. That's definitely respectable. It's definitely not as fast as some of the NVMe drives, but for what you're going to be using this smartboard for, it is definitely plenty. So now if you're interested to see how fast the USB Type-C ports are in the front and on the PC itself, I've got my SSD connected to the front port. We're already on the drive itself, and we'll start our tests. So here are the results for the SSD connected to the front USB Type-C port. We have 43.55 read and 43.79 write. Now this SSD is capable of doing around 500 megabits per second, but as you can see here, it's being bottlenecked by the USB Type-C. So let's connect it to the USB Type-C port on the PC, rerun the test, and see if there's any difference. So now the SSD is connected to the USB Type-C port on the PC itself, and let's rerun the tests. So as you can see, using the USB Type-C port on the PC itself, we're getting much better results. Now we've got 456.50 for the read and 445.63 for the write. Now if you can't access the back of your smartboard as easily as I can, not really a big deal. I would just suggest getting a USB Type-C extension plugging it into the PC, and then you can have it resting on your desk or hanging down below the smartboard, and you can easily plug in anything you need to that extension to use that port. So if you want the fastest speeds possible, I would definitely use the USB Type-C port on the PC itself, but if you want to access the front, you're going to get a little bit slower speeds, but it's still going to work. So now let's run our Geekbench 6 tests. As you can see, again, we're using the Intel Core i5 11th Gen. It's got 4 cores, 8 threads, 1 processor. It is the Tiger Lake -U socket 1449. The base frequency is 2.59 gigahertz, and the maximum frequency is 4390 megahertz, which is 4.3 gigahertz. So now let's run our tests. All right, so here we have our Geekbench results. We got an 1866 for the single core and 4587 for the multi. So now let's go back and do a GPU benchmark. And then here we have our Geekbench GPU score of 9639, and that is using the Intel Xe Iris graphics. It says the maximum frequency was 1300 megahertz and the device memory was 3.20 gigabytes. And like I mentioned earlier about showing you all the technicals for the hardware inside the PC, here we have the CPU. Again, it's the Intel Core i5 11th Gen. It's the Tiger Lake. The base clock is 2600 megahertz, which is 2.6 gigahertz. And the Turbo Max is 4400 megahertz, which is 4.4 gigahertz. And then here we have some of the motherboard numbers. As you can see, we're using 8 gigs of memory. It is DDR4 SD RAM, and the clock is 1200 megahertz. And then here we have some information on the graphics chip. It's using 128 megabytes for the video memory. We've got 1300 megahertz for the graphics processor and about 1200 for the graphics memory clock. And then for the Ethernet connection, it is using a gigabit Ethernet NIC. And for the wireless, it's got a max speed of 390 megabits per second. And let's do an internet speed test. I do have the PC connected to my Ethernet port, and I do get gigabyte speeds. So not bad at all. As you can see, we got 933 megabits per second down and 936 megabits per second up. Now, one other thing I do want to let you know about the USB Type-C ports on the front and on the PC is they only transmit data, not video. So if you try to hook up your MacBook to the USB Type-C port, it's not going to be able to display anything on the smartboard as if it was an external display. And the port can also be used to charge up small devices, but it doesn't seem to charge up my tablet or my phone. So now that we have all the technical data out of the way, let's try to play some games. So the first game we're going to try to play is StarCraft. Now, I know me and my friends used to play StarCraft a long time ago. It's a very low graphics game, so it shouldn't have any problems running on this PC, but we're going to try it out anyway. All right. Let's go to our menu, options, game speeds all the way, video, full screen, monitor, gamma correction, HD graphics. Okay, everything looks as good as it's gonna get. All right. The game seems to be running just fine. Yeah, I don't see any problems with it running StarCraft. Yeah, so as you can see, it's running StarCraft just fine. So now let's move on to something a little bit more graphic intense. So another game I really enjoyed playing back in the day was Portal 2. If you've never played it, I would definitely recommend it, and I still think it holds up to this day. And this game is, of course, a little older, but the graphics are still a little bit more intense than StarCraft. Right, so here we are in the settings. As you can see under video, we have it set to 16:9. The resolution is also native at 4K, so that's definitely good. Let's go to advanced video. Shader detail low. Effect detail high. Texture, let's put that up a little bit, see how much we can get out of it. All right, so I've also hooked up my Xbox controller to this as well, so I'm going to use this instead of the keyboard.
You are simply experiencing a rare reaction in which the material emancipation grill may have emancipated the ear tubes inside your head.
So you can see the graphics are definitely better than StarCraft, and everything's running really smooth. I don't really see any hiccups going on. Xbox controller working perfectly fine. I don't see any lag. Oh, there was just a little bit of lag. But again, I did raise up the detail for the models, as you saw, to high. So if you want a perfectly smooth experience, you might want to lower that down just a little bit. But for the most part, the game is totally playable. And as you can see, the graphics aren't really that bad.
Hey, you made it! There should be a portal device on that poker. Portal done.
So as you can see, it's more than capable of playing games like Portal 2 that have some pretty decent graphics without really any stuttering. Again, this is a smart board and it's really not made to play high graphics games, but as you can see, it's pretty capable. So now let's try something that requires a little bit more graphics power, like PUBG. So here we are on the main menu of PUBG, and you can already kind of see how low I had to put the graphics just for it to run on this PC. And if we go into our graphics settings, I'll show you what I have it set at. So here we are in our settings. We go into graphics. You can see how low everything is. I have everything set to very low. I couldn't put it anywhere near medium or some of the best. Like the overall graphics quality is very low. I had to set it this way just to even get it to somewhat run, but I'm gonna load up the game and we'll see what happens. And it looks like the game crashed. And it crashed again. So I'm not sure if the game just isn't optimized or if it's just too much for the system to handle, but you're not going to be able to play PUBG either way with this. And again, if you want to watch some 4K video files from an external hard drive, you can do that as well. Today I've got for you a really useful piece of tech that you might not have ever seen before. This is the HKMLC 75-inch smartboard. Now I've had a chance. Works without any issues. Now, even though this does have a PC and a Android tablet built in, just like the Android side, you're not going to be able to install some of the applications, which means some of the streaming apps you might not be able to install, like Disney Plus, but you can still hook up a Firestick to this and use that for all your streaming. All right, so I just plugged in my Firestick, and as you can see for the display, we are running up to 4K. Picture looks nice and clear, and now you have all of the applications that you might not have been able to load on to the Android tablet side of the smartboard. We've got our YouTube, Disney Plus, Plex, Netflix. Everything's running very smooth, and you have the controller that you can use to control the Fire Stick, and if you get an external attachment or if your controller supports it, you can also turn the smartboard on and off. So as you saw, this smartboard is pretty capable between the Android system and the PC. I think it can do a lot more than what it was originally intended for, but that's definitely a good thing because everybody has different needs and wants for the smartboard. So I hope this video gave you some insight on what the smartboard can do and what its limitations are for the scenarios that you might be using it for. And if you guys want to pick this up, I will be putting product links in this video's description. And if you do pick one up, let me know what you're going to be using it for in the comments. And I definitely recommend checking out part 1 of this review because you'll find out more about what the smartboard can actually do and how everything functions. And if you want to check that out, just click on the video you see on your screen right now. If you guys enjoyed the video, it would really help out the channel if you gave me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.